Even if you don't know what you're missing, your body does. It's important to remember that everyone is unique and everyone reacts differently. But let's look at some common physical and mental side effects of never having sex. First, let's look at the physical effects of never having sex. There are many misconceptions about the physical effects of lack of sex, which we will debunk later. But the truth may be scarier. Men who have sex regularly and ejaculate more often have a lower risk of prostate cancer. This means that if you as a man have never had sex, you actually have a higher risk of developing prostate cancer. The reason is that humans, like all living things on this planet, have evolved into reproductive machines. Whether you enjoy sex or not, your body's primary purpose is to reproduce because that's how all living things evolved. The body needs to release old sperm to create new, more viable sperm. As with other devices, if the male genitalia is not used regularly, problems or system malfunctions may occur. It's not clear what the exact cause of prostate cancer is, but research shows that men who have sex or ejaculate frequently tend to have a lower risk of prostate cancer. So if a man has never had sex, he should at least masturbate. This will be a common theme here, as some of the benefits of sex can also be achieved through self-liberation, but not all. If you're a man who's never had sex, you should definitely consider getting regular prostate exams. For women who have never had sex, this has a different impact on the body. Sex strengthens the pelvic floor muscles that support the bladder. If a woman has never had sex, her bladder may be weak. This can lead to leakage or incontinence. Sex is a physical activity that requires exercising the muscles involved from time to time. If you never have sex, these muscles don't get exercise, causing them to become weak. It turns out that if women don't strengthen the muscles they use during sex, it can have negative effects on other body systems. However, women can also reap sexual benefits through self-pleasure. It turns out that in humans, simply simulating sexual intercourse can trick the body into receiving many of the benefits associated with the act. Another negative effect that women who have never had sex may experience is that their vaginas may be drier than those of women who have been sexually active. This isn't necessarily a problem, it just can be uncomfortable. So if a woman has never had sexual intercourse and feels discomfort in her genitals, it may be due to a lack of lubrication in the muscles and organs. This problem can also be solved by masturbating. At some point in their lives, people who have never had sex may want to participate in this activity. In this case, lack of sex in early life may hinder sexual activity. If a person has not had sex his entire life, sexual arousal may take longer than expected. This happens because the body is experiencing completely new sensations, and since these sensations are different from anything it has felt before, it may take a while for the necessary fluids to flow. This seems counterintuitive, as one would expect someone who has never had sex to have their body ready. However, the longer a person goes without sex, the longer it takes for the body to prepare for the activity. Your body needs to produce hormones and release them into your bloodstream, which then increases blood flow to parts of your body that are never or rarely used. This can take a while, especially if you've never had sex before. Avoiding sexual intercourse may be linked to high blood pressure in both men and women. Several studies have shown that people who have regular sex tend to have lower blood pressure. Therefore, the opposite may also be true. People who have never had sex may have higher blood pressure than people with strep throat. The most likely reason is the link between sex and lowering stress hormones in the body. The same stress hormones are higher if a person has never had sex. People who are stressed tend to have higher blood pressure. This is a serious health risk that single people should be aware of. You should definitely find other ways to lower your stress levels and blood pressure. As we have already said, this can be achieved through menstruation, but there are also other ways, such as meditation. Here, too, our bodies develop into sex machines. So they figured there would be releases from time to time. High blood pressure is definitely a side effect of abstinence. But sex can also do things to your body that you don't know you have. Having sex, or more specifically, having an orgasm, is associated with positive effects on the immune system. Psychologists Carl Charnetsky and Francis Brennan Jr. conducted a study in which they collected saliva samples from people who regularly had sex and those who did not, and got some surprising results. In patients who had sex, saliva contained higher levels of immunoglobulin A, an antibody that helps prevent colds. Therefore, sex may have health benefits for a person's immune system. If this is true, then people who have never had sex may be more likely to get sick than others. The reason for this immune system boost may have more to do with the proximity of another person during sex than the act itself. Unfortunately, you probably won't be able to boost your immune system through masturbation because it's only one part of it. Abstinence appears to have negative effects on the body. But what about the mental impact? Are people who have never had sex at risk for more serious mental health problems? Since everyone's situation is different, there is no clear answer. But people who have never had sex may be at higher risk for certain negative psychological problems. As already mentioned, certain hormones are released during sex, which reduce stress levels in the body. This can also be achieved through masturbation, but another important mental health benefit of sex is the feelings associated with physical intimacy that cannot be achieved through self-pleasure. People who have never had sex before may develop what psychologists call skin hunger or touch hunger. This is because a lack of close physical contact can lead to negative psychological problems. Even if a person spends a lot of time with other people, sexual intimacy cannot be recreated. Physical contact and sexual feelings are sometimes necessary. If someone has never had sex, this may cause their body to react negatively to the lack of intimacy. It's not surprising if someone who has never had sex feels isolated or unsafe. This may be caused by a hormonal imbalance in the body caused by a lack of sexual contact. Changing the body's chemical makeup through sex is not just because it feels good or pleasurable, but because it is something intimately shared between individuals. If someone who has never had sex feels depressed or lonely even when there are other people around, it may be because their brains crave intimacy. In these cases, evolution is again the culprit. Our DNA is selfish and wants to pass it on to the next generation. Therefore, almost all of us are destined to have sex. One of the ways our bodies lure us into mating is by rewarding us not only with pleasurable physical sensations, but also with mental stimulation. The brains of people who have never had sex may crave intimacy. This in turn may have a negative impact on mental health. In fact, the brain of a person who has never had sex starts to rebel against him. If your brain is fighting you, it's going to be a bad time. However, as mentioned earlier, everyone is different. Some people don't actually need sex and are still healthy and happy. This may be due to low sexual desire or because the person is asexual. The human brain is a great thing, and for some people, it can even overcome our biological impulses. In other cases, the brain may be programmed not to crave sex at all, and for these people, abstinence most likely has no side effects. There are misconceptions about what happens to people who have never had sex. Let's break them down. Someone may have told you that a woman's vagina closes when she's not having sex. Not only is this untrue, but think of how many other complications this can cause for that person besides being unable to have intercourse. A woman who has never had sex is likely to have a smaller vaginal opening than a sexually active woman, but the vagina is never completely closed.